Welcome to Healing Childhood Trauma, the podcast for millennial women who are ready to heal from the past. Here, we have the deeper discussions on emotional well-being and practical tips that will empower you to transform your relationships and underlying anxiety from insecure to secure attachment. I'm Lizandra, your host and psychotherapist. I'm a little bit obsessed with human development, deep conversations, and finding the lesson even in the most challenging of circumstances. I'm very happy to have you with me on this journey of self-discovery where we unpack the past and heal in the present. Okay, wellness practices, do's and don'ts, because there are some wellness practices that are very helpful and beneficial for you on your healing journey and help to regulate your nervous system. And then there are other wellness practices that are frankly a waste of time, a waste of money, and basically cashing in on your vulnerabilities. Now, there is nothing wrong with spending some cash. In fact, I think it's useful to invest in yourself and invest the time. But with any kind of wellness practice, and especially if you are on your healing journey and you've been through trauma and you are trying to heal from trauma, sometimes you can lose sight of the things that are helping because we are engaging in the things that are the fluffy side of wellness practices. We are doing the things that are somewhat superficial, that look good on the outside but doesn't do much for you on the inside, and maybe in some instances it can cause more harm than good. If you feel like you are doing all of the things and you are not seeing any benefit from it, you still feel like you're very much stuck, you are still in the same place, part of that could be because it's not all that helpful. If this is the first time listening to me, welcome. I'm Lizandra and I'm a psychotherapist. I'm not going to lie, I do love a bit of a wellness practice. I do like some sound meditation and all of those things, but I do not do those things in replacement of therapy. And obviously, because I am a therapist, I am going to be coming from a perspective, probably somewhat a biased perspective, let's just be real, because that is the field that I work in. But that doesn't mean that I can't have a bit of a balanced view as to what is helpful and what is not so much, because it's also based off of my clinical experience. This is just an invitation for you to kind of think about what works for you, take whatever works and leave whatever doesn't. And that applies to even listening to me or listening to anybody in the psychology or wellness space. You are your biggest expert on you, so don't let anybody try and tell you that you don't know yourself very well or you can't make your own decisions, because part of healing and part of what we want to work through in therapy is for you to be empowered rather than relying on the external intuition or the external judgment of others. So there is a difference between practices that are for nervous system regulation and practices that are about more overstimulation and productivity and getting things done. If you listen to certain types of people who are perhaps in like the coaching industry, for example, who are very much focused on mindset, getting shit done, 5 a.m. miracle mornings, having extreme cold plunges, pushing through your fatigue, go hard or go home. If it's a choice between going hard or going home, I'm going to pick home every time, because home is where the food is, home is where the snacks are, home is where comfort is, that's where my bed is. So we're always picking home, okay? But there are some people who really push and drive productivity over emotional well-being and think that you can just think your way through things and push your way through things, which really isn't very beneficial or helpful to your nervous system. And in fact, it can kind of push your nervous system more into fight or flight or into freeze, because you've almost got like this very nervous, panicky energy of, I need to do more, I'm not doing enough, I'm not being enough. I'm really not listening to when your body needs time for recuperation and for rest. And obviously, if you are kind of lacking in motivation, there is most definitely a space for being more productive, but it also depends on the context. So if you have been in your freeze response and it's been very hard for you to get motivated, and that's coming from a place of trauma or a place of difficult experiences in the past that are now showing up in your present, if you then try and do coaching, which is about productivity and your mindset, you're probably not going to get the best result. And in fact, it might even make you go into more of a shame spiral of, why is this not working for me? I feel like I'm trying to do all the things, but I just don't have the motivation. And it can be because you're not addressing the nervous system work, and it's not really a trauma-informed approach, because you're just trying to push through and you're not actually listening to what it is that your body needs, which is around more emotional regulation and nervous system regulation, which is something that is much more slower paced, and it almost has like a counterintuitive approach of actually you need to do less in order to be able to feel more. And so if you are pushing through and you are doing these extreme cold plunges, it's too harsh for your nervous system and you need a bit more of a gentle approach. So there's a time and a place for it. You can just kind of ask yourself, is this something that is helping me to calm my system, or is it giving me like a massive adrenaline hit, or is it making me feel overwhelmed and overstimulated? Cold plunges aren't necessarily a bad thing, but it's about what the context is in how and when you're using them. So for some people it's effective. So for example, with anxiety, there have been certain clients that I've shared how to use ice, for example, rather than doing like a full cold body plunge. If you've never done it before, doing something as extreme as that is almost shocking your nervous system, as opposed to gently easing your nervous system in. So maybe holding ice is a good starting step, as opposed to just plunging your whole entire body. That's quite extreme. And then there's embodiment versus avoidance. Things that can be useful are practices that help you to bring more awareness and bring you into your body. So yoga, Pilates, somatic therapy, exercise, not excessively exercising, something that moves your body, mindfulness, meditation, all of these kind of spiritual practices and things that you're using your mind, you're reconnecting with your body again. Mindfulness can be a good one when it's appropriate, but it's not necessarily appropriate for everyone, which pretty much goes for any kind of, whether it's a wellness practice or whether it's a type of therapy. There is no one fit solution that will resolve trauma for every single person, because there's nothing that has a 100% efficacy rate. But where it can become a problem of certain wellness practices can be around almost spiritual bypassing, where you're doing like some journaling work, lighting your candle, doing sage, incense, all that kind of stuff, which again, I love all that stuff, right? And there is definitely a place for it. But if you are using those kind of tools as a way to ignore your trauma or to avoid going too deep into the feelings because it feels too hard and it feels too messy, that can be like you're bypassing dealing with the root cause of the trauma. And so it might look all, nice aesthetically, and it might look good on the outside, and it might feel good because, who doesn't love a scented candle and a sound bath and stuff like that? But if you're only focusing on good vibes only and good energy and good things only, that's not really the core of what working through and processing your trauma is like. The reality of processing trauma is that it's very messy. Not to put you off of it, because obviously I want you to be able to work through it. There's a balance of it. There's a balance for lightness and joy, but there's also like a real, it's trauma. So it's going to be hard to overcome. It's going to be hard to process. It's not going to be a very easy process. If it was easy, everyone would do it and there would be no such thing as trauma. So it's not an easy thing to go through, but if you're only going through the light parts of it and the parts that look and feel good, that might be why you're only going so far in your healing journey, and why you might actually find yourself either getting stuck or just repeating a lot of behaviors or repeating a lot of toxic relationships and dysfunctional patterns. And then boundaries with the kind of information that you listen to, or it's really about showing discernment. So trying not to compare yourself to influencers, for example, or seeing something online and thinking, why am I not in the same position that they are? They seem to be doing so much better than I am. Feeling like you need to take, all these different types of supplements, or you need to keep going on like expensive retreats. You need to basically just over consuming programs, therapy, whatever it is. That in itself, it can become very anxiety inducing. And it's also really expensive if you keep pursuing this idea of being this fully healed version of you, because you can't just stay in the space of I'm constantly healing all the time. You have to actually just live your life as well, and you have to be able to put what you've learned either in therapy or whatever kind of healing space you're in. You have to put that into practice in your life and in your relationships in a very real way. And you're not really going to be able to do that if you're just taking supplements and just consuming all the things and actually not embodying any of the things that you're either learning or that you're just constantly seeking the external. So you're constantly looking at something else outside of you that could potentially help to fix you. So discernment is very important. Having boundaries with the kind of information that you listen to and who you listen to is very important. So listening to maybe some influencers who are trying to make a quick buck, that's out. But listening to yourself more and showing discernment for what is appropriate for you in your own healing journey and not being guilted into it or shamed into any kind of process, not being shamed into therapy, shamed into coaching, shamed into whatever wellness space that you're in, that's out, and listening to yourself more is in. Okay, and this big one is for me about rest and using rest as wellness. So sometimes there are so many of these wellness practices and retreats and different things, and take this new supplement and there's this new, I don't know, ayahuasca, whatever else. I mean, I've never tried that personally, and each to their own, but there's always like this new thing for people to try. And sometimes you don't need to do all those things. Sometimes you just need to listen to your body and you need to rest. You need to stop focusing on productivity and doing more. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and let yourself self-reflect, sleep when you need to sleep, rest when you need to rest, and to stop using this hustle culture disguised as wellness, and it's capitalism, and it's not listening to what we need, which is more connection, rest. And we are not robots. We are not designed to just keep going and going and going. So if there's anything that kind of reinforces that of rest when you're dead, I don't co-sign that at all. That's not for me, and that's not a very trauma-informed approach way to think of healing from trauma. So at the heart of wellness, it's not about doing more or keeping up with trends, because a lot of these wellness practices are things that many indigenous cultures have been doing for hundreds or thousands of years, and it's just being repackaged and marketed into something entirely new when it's been done before, and probably better, to be honest. So discernment, picking what's right for you, being careful of who you're listening to, and paying attention to, does your nervous system feel calmer, or does it feel like you're going into a shame spiral, or you're going into productivity? And that will help you to kind of listen to yourself more and know what wellness practices are for you and which ones you can probably leave in the ice bath. Can you tell I'm not like amazingly keen on that one? That's just because I don't really like cold things. I don't like being cold. So that cold plunge malarkey, yeah, I'm not gonna be rushing anytime soon to be doing that. But if that's a bit of you and it helps you, crack on. It's about finding what works for you. Okay, that is all for today's episode. I will catch you in the next one. For more information about connecting with me and learning more about me and my work, check out the show notes. I will post some links in there. If you want to say hi, come and connect with me over on Instagram or on TikTok. I would love to hear from you. Catch you next time. Bye. Thank you for joining this episode of Healing Childhood Trauma. I hope you found today's discussion insightful and empowering. Remember, healing is a journey and you are not alone on this path. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. And you can share this episode with a friend. Your feedback helps this podcast to reach more women who are ready to heal and build secure, healthy relationships and heal from the past.